I'm Jack Plunkett. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 2 of The Next Boom, Consumers and Savers, Customers and Spenders, how they're changing the world around you and what that means for the next boom. Because we are now in what I call the post-excessive consumption era, which is actually going to put us on much firmer footing for the next boom. Today, in mature economies like that of America, consumers have evolved attitudes about work, savings, spending, investment, thrift in the future that are going to have a very positive impact on the way things go moving forward. That's because consumers today are much less interested in being in debt. They've been in debt and it was ugly. They didn't like it. In fact, from 1980 through the mid-2000s, over a period of about 25 years, household debt as a percent of disposable income about doubled from 67% to 133%, an absolutely unsustainable level, because consumers were on a wild shopping spree, driving debt up, using credit cards, getting into a situation where they took advantage of extremely easy credit terms and extremely low interest rates to their detriment. Purchases are much more likely to be made with cash today. A much higher percentage of income is going into savings. In fact, during the 1980s, savings as a percent of income in the United States were running at about 10%, where by the mid-2000s, by the peak of the last boom, we were down to less than 1% savings rate. That has changed dramatically. Households in the United States are now putting in the neighborhood of 6% of their disposable income into savings. All very, very positive, but it's going to be a slow, painful transition from a nation that overconsumes to a nation with a more reasonable consumer debt level, a much more positive and important savings level, and a dramatic evolution in what consumers want. Just because American consumers are spending less and are moving to more reasonable and sustainable levels of consumption and debt doesn't mean America is not important as a market to the world. In fact, America accounts for about 20% of all global GDP. In other words, roughly 1 out of every $5 of economic activity that go on in the entire world occur in the United States. And America remains that great golden land across the ocean where all other nations want to sell their goods and services because it's so vast. America's GDP as of 2010 at about $15 trillion is roughly 3 times as big as China's, the number 2 country, and about 3 times as big as Japan's, the number 3 country. It's vastly important. Now, American businesses that want to grow domestically, where should they look for new customers and new business growth within the United States? Most importantly, there's what we call Generation Y, the 91 million Americans born between 1981 and 2002 that are going to be forming new households at a very rapid rate, becoming the biggest consuming group in America to a large extent, a growth engine as that Generation Y cohort begins to graduate from school, establish new homes, become faithful but conservative consumers. It's going to be a big impetus to future growth. Then there's that general rapid growth in the American population, looking to add about 40 million people from 2010 through 2025, growing from about 310 million people to 350 million people. That's a vast new market for American businesses to sell to. And finally, there will be a spend down eventually as today's baby boomers hit retirement age, eventually get into the elderly category and start depleting their assets, spending down to take care of themselves in their old age, which means a lot more expenditure on health care and a lot more expenditure on things that are of great appeal to the elderly, certain types of travel, certain types of leisure activities, certain types of housing. There are lots of opportunities for retail and business spending in the United States over the near future, and lots of things that are going to come together and make that very positive. Meanwhile, we have a significant readjustment to go through. So for the near future and for the next boom, keep in mind a big shift in consumers in the United States, a much higher savings rate, much more conservative spending practices, much lower levels of debt, consumers looking for long-lasting items of high perceived value, great quality, less interested in fashion, more interested in long-lasting value that represents money well and wisely spent. All positive trends. Thanks. We'll see you soon for Chapter 3 of the next boom.